Primul atac pe care rușii l-au lansat asupra ucrainenilor a fost în 2014, când peninsula Crimeea a fost invadată de așa numiții omuleți verzi și apoi a fost anexată forțat la Federația Rusă. Pe 24 februarie 2022, Vladimir Puțin a declanșat războiul total împotriva ucrainenilor cu scopul declarat de a le șterge țara de pe fața pământului. Un an mai târziu, Ucraina rezistă, iar în jurul ei s-a adunat întreaga lume democrată. Trimisul Kievului la București, ambasadorul Ihor Prpkopchuk, este invitatul meu de astăzi. Sunt Cristina Cileacu, începe Pașaport diplomatic. Ihor Prpkopchuk, ambassador of Ukraine in Romania, welcome to Diplomatic Passport.
Well, thank you very much for this invitation, and I'm very glad that we have the opportunity to have this discussion today, Cristina.
Ambassador, the date of 24 of February 2022 is a sad day, not only for the democracies of the world, but especially for Ukraine, because your country wake up in a different reality. Ukrainian citizens become victims of war, become refugees. Your country is destroyed and everything is upside down. They say that in every darkness there is a bit of light, though. Is this the case of Ukraine being attacked by the Russians?
Today we have this discussion 1 year after the Russian Federation launched this full-scale invasion of Ukraine. And as we have this discussion, it is necessary to mark that when the aggression was launched, the Russian propaganda claimed that it would last just a few days. But now we meet 1 year later. And therefore we can say with full confidence that Putin and his regime have already sustained a strategic failure in terms of invasion into Ukraine. Yes, as the Ukrainian nation, as the country, as the people, we continue to face unprecedented tests and challenges in all fields. These are military tests and challenges, economic, financial, humanitarian, social, in every field. We are having the war of the scale not seen in Europe since the Second World War, with its great impact on the people and on the economy. And at the same time, Ukraine has sustained the pressure from Russia. It has been able to defend itself. By now, Ukrainian forces have liberated nearly half of, so to say, newly seized territories of Ukraine from the Russian occupation. And this is a big achievement. The Ukrainian nation is resolved to fully liberate the Ukrainian territory, the Ukrainian lands from the Russian occupation until the established borders between Ukraine and the Russian Federation. We know where these borders are, and there is a very strong resolve among the Ukrainian nation to make sure that Ukraine regains full control of its territory, of its sovereignty, of its independence on all of the territories belonging to Ukraine. And this will be a huge tribute to the aim, to the objective of making sure that the basic norms of international law are fully respected.
War is evil, and we have to think to the civilians, of course, because there are professional military, but mostly civilians are those that suffer more. The psychological pressure must be huge, must be massive. How is it like to live in a country that is bombed every day?
Suffering defeat on the battleground, the Russian forces resorted to massive attacks on civilian infrastructure, on energy infrastructure, on residential areas to intimidate the people, but also to create conditions that would be unbearable for the civilian population. Until now, we have seen in the last months at least 14 massive attacks which were carried out against the critical infrastructure facilities in different parts of the country. Nearly 50% of Ukrainian electricity and grid system have been damaged by those attacks. And that, of course, greatly increased the pressure on the civilian population. And of course, we very much understand also what is at stake. At stake is the very existence of the Ukrainian state, of the Ukrainian nation, and at the stake is also the existence of broader democratic order in Europe. Because for us Ukrainians, there's no question at all that Russia's war against Ukraine, Russia's aggression against Ukraine is not only about Ukraine. The neo-imperial and expansionist ambitions are far larger, and they extend beyond the borders or the territory of Ukraine. And therefore it is so important that we have the solidarity of the international community, of our neighboring states, including Romania, in helping Ukraine withstand the difficulties, the hardships and the great pressures.
Since you mentioned Romania, of course Romanians open their homes for Ukrainian refugees in the beginning of the war. They still do this. It's a great gesture of humanity, but there were some discontents at the level of Romanian population regarding the new law on minority that was released by the Ukrainian parliament. Can you explain this situation? This new law didn't improve but didn't change something at the level of the Romanian minority living in Ukraine.
I'll make the answer in two parts. And first, I would like
emotional, so this is why I'm asking. Of course, those two matters are not directly related, but you understand for sure that people react to emotions.
First, I would like to say that Romania and the Romanian people were among the first to receive the flow of Ukrainians fleeing the war from that was happening in Ukraine because of Russia's invasion. And as you rightly said, they opened the doors of their homes. I would go as far as to say that they also opened their hearts to receive Ukrainians and to show this very big generosity to the people who were in despair, fleeing the war. And this sentiment is very well seen and highly appreciated. And definitely there was also a robust response coming from the government of the country that acted fast in establishing the necessary structures of response to the humanitarian crisis. But as I often have to say, to help Ukraine in Ukrainians, it is not only to help those who fled the war. Yeah. It is also helping the people who stay in Ukraine and who need to live through all the hardships every day. And here again, Romania has been providing assistance to Ukraine in various forms. Speaking about the topic that you raised about the law on national minorities and communities that was adopted in Ukraine in December of last year. In fact, this is the topic that I regularly discuss with our Romanian friends, because I believe there was quite a lot of misperceptions about this law that was adopted. The law that was adopted, it reflected it was in response to one of the recommendations that was produced by the European Commission in June of last year as the historic decision on granting Ukraine a candidate status was adopted. And this law, unlike the previous one, fully incorporates the standards that found their reflection in a number of international instruments, including the European Charter for Protection of National Minorities under the Council of Europe, or the European Charter for Regional or Minority Languages. We have included in this Act a number of recommendations that have been expressed by the Venice Commission of the Council of Europe in the past years. One of such recommendations, for example, was that there needs to be a strong central body within the Ukrainian authorities responsible for the national minority policies and for interaction with national minorities, and with relatively extensive powers. The establishment of such body is reflected in this new law.
And how come you explain the reaction of our Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the President?
You would see that in the reaction of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the press release that was published, it contains two parts. And one of them are the positive elements relating to this new legislation, whereas also mentioning a few areas which raise concerns from the Romanian side. And these are exactly the areas on which we have our bilateral dialogue. The presidents had a chance to review this topic, and we have a common view that the rights of Ukrainians in Romania and of Romanians in Ukraine must be ensured and respected at the same level.
So it's still an ongoing process.
This is the process that was further on discussed by our foreign ministers, how we direct our interaction to make sure that the questions that have arisen are dealt with. There are also areas where we need to provide more clarifications and explanations to our Romanian friends, because the law that we refer to and we discussed has kind of a framework character that would require that additional normative acts are adopted, be it by the government, or some questions are reflected in other legislative acts.
Ambassador, just a parenthesis, because we speak about one ongoing process. It's this type of discussion that Ukraine and Romania are having at the level of authorities. For the rest of the people that are not luckily living a war, how is it like to live in a country with continuous attacks, but in the same time to have a state that works? At what level right now in Ukraine are still functioning the agriculture, the industry, the state institutions, and so on?
I think I can say with full confidence that in this 1 year of full-scale invasion of Russia into Ukraine, the Ukrainian state has come to symbolize what resilience stands for. Resilience in every aspect. Again, in terms of the governance, in terms of the economic performance, in terms of responses to numerous social challenges that arise, and also resilience on the level of the business community and on a broader societal level. But I think important is to mention that all the functions of a state have continued and continue to be performed despite this all-out war. Of course, we encounter enormous losses because of this aggression, and yet the business community operates, and the government have tried hard to create incentives for the businesses to continue to function. Despite the war, and it is important to note, Ukraine has managed to retain its seat among top 5 countries exporters of food products. And in this respect, again, I would like to note the response that we were receiving from Romania in terms of facilitating Ukrainian exports. Yeah. We have managed to maintain the financial stability in the country. We have managed to find the form to continue despite of these numerous challenges and problems created by the Russian attacks and the Russian aggression.
I think everyone admired the courage of the Ukrainian on the front line. It's both impressive and also emotional to see these people fighting for the liberty of their country. They need still a lot of equipment. The Western world is providing them. They will provide the solidarity message. I think it's quite clear for everyone now. How can these people keep on fighting when they hear every day, and I think all of us realize that the end of this war is nowhere in sight?
There is a very strong motivation for Ukrainian servicemen, for Ukrainian defense forces to continue fighting. They know very well what they fight for. They fight for the existence of the state. They fight for the future of their families. Those families who stayed behind on the territories of Ukraine. Some of the families had to move to other countries beyond the borders of Ukraine. But the members of the defense forces know very well what they fight for. They also know that Ukraine is not alone, and this is extremely important. There is a very big coalition of countries that stay with Ukraine in full solidarity, making sure that the Russians' attempts to divide this coalition fail. And therefore, having this motivation, it also adds confidence in the victory of Ukraine in this battle, because the right is on our side, and we are fully confident of that. For the victory to happen, it is indeed necessary that the military assistance comes to Ukraine in the scope which is required, and also with the speed which is required to defeat the Russian aggression. We must not underestimate the potential of the Russian forces that they still retain. For now, we see that nearly 300,000 Russian fighters are continuing their assaults on in different areas of the combat line. And the combat line itself, I mean, this is the line of active combat, is of the length of 1,500 kilometers. This should give, again, an understanding of the scale of this war, and also of the scale of assistance and reserves which are needed to defeat this aggression. Ukrainian forces need aviation, we need air support, we need stronger air defense capabilities to disrupt the Russian attacks on different civilian facilities on the Ukrainian territory. And we need longer range capability in terms of Ukrainian artillery to disrupt the Russian supply routes further on in the occupied territories of Ukraine.
We said that no one sees for the moment any end, any near end of this war, but at some point in time everything has an end. What do you think is the place of Russia in a world where we clearly proved that aggressors cannot belong?
We know that we are capable of doing that, and Ukrainian forces have shown in the past months that they are capable of winning the aggressor. In terms of the seat of Russia in the international system, after it committed this open act of aggression, of full-scale invasion into the territory of Ukraine, there is no doubt at all in our mind that this must be a place of isolation and exclusion of Russia from international formats. For now, the Russian Federation has already been ousted from a number of international organizations where its place was limited. I must also emphasize a topic of great significance, and this is the illegitimate presence of the Russian Federation in the UN Security Council. This is a topic that Ukraine has raised loudly in December of last year, and we see that this wrong that was allowed to happen in 1990 and was tolerated, this mistake must be corrected. As Russia took the seat by simply replacing the nameplate of the Soviet Union with the nameplate of Russia. So therefore, the question is that we need to take effort, to take steps to make sure that every single nation that joins the United Nations does so within the established procedure by the UN Charter. In case of Russia, this was not the case. And therefore, this is also something that we strongly feel must be corrected, particularly as Russia, by its actions, denies the very fundamental goals of the United Nations, and that is the maintenance of peace and security and the development of friendly relations between states.
Ambassador, let's hope for peace, and thank you so much for this interview.
We all hope for peace. I must say that Ukraine and the Ukrainian people are most interested in peace on the Ukrainian land. We want this peace to be fair, to be just, that would be underpinned and based on the fundamental norms of international law.
Atât pentru astăzi, dar rămânem în continuare online pe pagina de Facebook a emisiunii și pe contul nostru de Twitter. Revenim cu subiecte noi din lumea diplomației și a politicii externe, vinerea viitoare de la 11:30 și reluare sâmbătă după miezul nopții.